The story starts with the protagonist waking up and wondering what was happening, what he was seeing in front of him, and why he was seeing the name of a character he had written in a novel. He remembered that the character had died at only 16 years old and he wondered what was going on. But let's go back a few years earlier. The protagonist had woken up on this day not knowing what was happening. But a servant had made a noise, so he woke up. He asked the servant who it was, but she only told him she was sorry and that she deserved to die. Not knowing anything, he asked why she would say that, but she just kept hitting her head and telling him to please kill her. As the protagonist saw that she was going to hurt herself, he quickly ran to her, but as he touched her to help, she fainted. Suddenly, he wondered who she was, and she apparently had no Japanese physical appearance. He didn't want people to be hurt because of him, so after a few days, he started investigating and saw that a boy was always coming to write everything he did. He began to ask him many things, but as the boy was still scared, he just called him master and everything he said were like programming. So the protagonist checked what the boy was doing. When he saw that, he became nervous because apparently he had previously hit the boy a lot. Out of fear, he threw all the ink on the floor. He was asking for forgiveness from his lord and telling him to please not hit him, but the protagonist thought and felt like his body wanted to hit the boy. The boy was scared and kept saying, "Master, please don't hit me," but we see that everything that had happened at that moment was just the protagonist's imagination. He wondered why this was happening. He was able to investigate again and realized that he was actually the youngest son of a well-known magical clan. He had always mistreated the boy when he was little and looked down on his mother for being born of a marriage between the patriarch and a servant, always treating her as a maid despite her being his mother. He didn't even like that. He also began to remember everything he had written in the story and wondered why he had created such a disgusting character, and why he had been chosen for this. He also remembered hitting almost all of the servants and that he had been exiled to that place because he had gone too far, hitting a girl from a well-known family, like his. Because of this, his father had to bow to another patriarch and he was expelled from the family. After several memories, he realizes that after 15 years he would be executed. Therefore, he says he doesn't want that future. He also knew that his entire family would also be killed by none other than the hero or the main character or the protagonist. The protagonist says that although he is strong, he has to become stronger so that at least his family can survive. This happened because the protagonist's father had accidentally killed a member of a swordsman family. Another thing to note is that the protagonist of the magic family, while the protagonist of this novel comes from the martial arts family, and the girl that the protagonist previously hit comes from a martial arts family. So I ask you to remember that in order to continue on, as that girl will be very important for the end. After that, the protagonist was given a celestial eye ability. The protagonist didn't know how it had happened. That artifact belonged to the protagonist and why he could see that status window. But the status window had told him that the celestial eye had been activated and he didn't even know why he had all those abilities because the protagonist of the novel could send countless people with just that gift and he had a power equivalent to destroying the world. So much so that the protagonist of the novel, not even all the strength of the world could defeat him. Therefore, the protagonist says that that would be good for him since he had a skill that the protagonist was going to obtain. Therefore, it would be very important for him to develop his magic. But he had realized that previously he had heard that in order to get at least 2 circles, people had to endure like 100 years. So he didn't even know how he was going to be able to. But he had called a servant and she arrives and he tells her that he wanted to get something. And he had realized that it was a servant that he had mistreated since he was little. After seeing the servant with the celestial eye, he realized that the servant was not a servant but an assassin, so he wondered what was happening. But after remembering, he realized that this world is governed by powerful and influential people. Therefore, the protagonist was a target in front of his brother. That's why he thought they were trying to kill him. He says that it seems that those girls have to pretend well and all that, those tears were a lie. So ignoring all that, he asked the lady to please stand up and to look for a little chocolate for her. It turns out that the girl was working for someone and he said for her to leave quickly. But the girl just hid behind and asked what happened to the young master before. He wouldn't even let her stand up. But now he was severely and it seemed as if she was another person. Meanwhile, in the protagonist's mind, he had to become stronger because there would be a war in the clan. Therefore, he decided to ask his subordinate to hurry, and those subordinates are called shadows because since they were little they were brainwashed to believe that he was their master. The protagonist asked him to quickly take him to the training place. So he took him to lead the protagonist to that place, but before he asked the protagonist why he was like that before. He used to treat him like his dog, but the protagonist never held a grudge against him. But the protagonist always hit him before, now he was just humbly asking him to take him. After arriving, the protagonist had realized something. The boy was named Hampton and had a poison ability. As he said, it was something like that, as a small boy like him had that ability. And if all the people of the clan wanted to kill him, but he paid no attention to it, since no one in the clan wanted him and all they wanted was to get rid of him as quickly as possible, since he was considered the scum of the clan. Therefore, after arriving, a boy had received him. He had asked him how the young master was, but he said he had nothing to do with it. The boy asked him who it was, but he said how he did not remember 365 days with 5 minutes. The boy said he had given him a blow and now acts like he's crazy. He said that yes, he would invite him, and he told the protagonist that if he had powerful beasts. So the boy said that he would never give a powerful beast to a useless person like him, but for revenge. He said that yes, he had some powerful beasts, and he in his imagination thought of improving all the beasts so that if the protagonist received a total damage and no one would blame him for it, so he had gone celebrating. He had told the protagonist to prepare, since he was going to put some level 1 mushrooms on him, which were minimally easy, but in his mind, he thought of improving them all, so that they would finish him off. So after the protagonist arrived, he realized the presence of the mushroom that did not seem anything impressive. It was just a little mushroom. But the boy told him not to worry. That little mushroom, despite being weak, was fast. Therefore, the protagonist would not even be able to defeat it at his current level. So he said that with all the magic he would imbue that mushroom with, it would make it much faster. And that would be worse for the protagonist, since if he dies at that moment, it will not be his fault. Therefore, he decided to give that mushroom all the magic he could, so that the protagonist would know the humiliation he had, since in his village, he was considered a genius. The protagonist had seen how each beast had moved at an impressive speed. But with his power and his cultivated mother, he had given a blow to what the boy asked when the protagonist had learned those techniques and was left open-mouthed at the immense mana that the protagonist had, and said that if he was training for a single blow, the protagonist had destroyed the mushroom. So the boy wondered what was happening. Not only was he a 9-year-old boy like the protagonist, had such power. So he asked the protagonist if that was enough. The protagonist told him that it was almost nothing. But we see that the system had rewarded him, since apparently he had defeated a minimal mushroom, but it was much since it had given him a special ability. After the surprise, he had said that if he had something more powerful. So the boy informed him that he had a mushroom and it was very powerful. The protagonist might say that it was shit. It only looked like the other one from behind. But the boy told him not to be confident. This one was much faster, and he could finish him off in an instant. To the protagonist, when he looked again at the mushroom, it had passed him by with extraordinary speed. To what the protagonist was surprised by the great explosion that had made in front of him. But from one to the mushroom, it chokle again headed towards the protagonist. But that attack could not be avoided, thus receiving the attack. And he said that apparently they were powerful, but it was not something he could not control. So he decided to stop the system that please channel all this human into just his fist and his body, and the system analyzed everything. So the product using that began to stop everything that the boy was surprised when the protagonist had learned mana control. And what was emanating his whole body as a small boy like him had so much mana, and suddenly using all his skills and accommodating it. He had given a fatal blow to the beast, but he had been surprised because that beast was more powerful than he thought. The shadow of the product had been surprised. They did not assimilate what they had seen as the protagonist had advanced. So the type intuits that apparently he was doing something strange, and the boy who was the shadow of the protagonist, that this dark-skinned guy here said that apparently he was training in secret while saying that he had finally found a light. He didn't want to follow his young master before, but now it seemed more friendly, so if he quickly took the protagonist so as not to cause a commotion, he decided to pretend to be unconscious so that if they did not think badly of him and saw that he changed. So everyone began calling the best medium that was there, but as they were only on the first floor and there were 5 floors, they went where the weakest doctor was. When the shadow arrived, he informed the doctor again that he needed help because he was very young. He was very injured, to which he had been surprised by what he had said. He wondered what was going on and if he was not the 6th, to which he continued to respond that he was the 7th, and told him how the 7th had come here, and he had explained that he had come to train. So after seeing him, he realized that his abilities were not appropriate for him, so he asked the other to help them. But they said that if he did, he might die. I know your problem. So the boy was about to use all his power, but as the protagonist could not stay being much or he would call another doctor. His ability exploded. He began pretending that he had reacted, and the boy was thinking that his abilities had improved. But he realized something. His abilities did not work, but the protagonist had regeneration inside instantly, so the explode was just making a look for him to stay quiet. And they wondered why his young master had come to that place, to which the protagonist thanked everyone, and they were surprised by the change of the protagonist since it was just a misfortune. After that, the girl had informed the protagonist that the only thing she had found was a chocolate, so there was nothing else to do, to which the protagonist replied that he no longer needed that and that she did not have to be snooping around. But what he really thought was that she was trying to poison him or something. But suddenly we see a conversation of the girl and the steward, and the protagonist was eating the chocolates and saying that apparently that boy didn't have bad taste. But he had realized something. His growth was growing numerous times, and he realized that that fat guy who possessed the body previously had not had that amount of excess mana. But the protagonist continued to enjoy and saying that he was going to lose weight. But suddenly, someone had arrived and wondered why a person had entered if he had only told them not to. But he finally realized that the person who possessed that body had a lot of fear of that boy and always treated him like a dog. To this, the arrogant boy had asked why he hadn't bowed his head, and the other boy had asked why he should do that. The protagonist then started throwing his stick, but a new ability activated in him, the ability to render the body slow motion. But that wasn't infinite, so he could dodge everything from weak people like that. When the boy saw him throw the attack, the protagonist had dodged it, so he asked him what he had done. The protagonist had just placed his hand on the stick and thrown it. So the boy said that he was just like a family dog and begged him to apologize quickly. But the protagonist just laughed at him and said that he didn't want to do that, but now he would have to kill him. So he started activating his attributes to finish him off at that moment, and he would tell his father that the assassin had come and killed him. And when he arrived, he found the body already dead. The message that his father treated him like a dog because that's how it was by coincidence. But the protagonist had extraordinary speed and had appeared behind him and had thrown multiple attacks. But suddenly he realized that he had gone too far because the boy was discovering a lot of blood and he wondered what was happening to him. So, to not let him die quickly, he started calling his men and telling them to bring the medicine. He didn't know that his magic power could destroy it like that since he didn't have elemental powers because he hadn't yet turned 10 years old, and yet he could defeat the 6th young man. Therefore, his butler quickly asked him to go fetch him, and he said that from now on he would not bother him anymore, as it had taught him a lesson in life. After that, the girl or servant was surprised. She said that everything he was telling her was a lie, but the shadows continued to tell her that everything he had chosen was true and not a lie. So she began to speak many things, saying that it was a rich challenge. But there was one thing that intrigued her, why he was a shadow. To which the boy said, I said why she knew that, to which I informed her that she knew all that because he had revealed it. He had revealed that he knew she was a killer. So after that, the protagonist had gone to the library as he had to investigate many matters as he did not even know how to use his magical power. And much more, he was surprised because he had found a person who was familiar to him. There, it is not explained that her name is Levia, she is now a librarian. The protagonist says, but before she was a known assassin as the Ice Witch in a kingdom. She had attacked for something that had been done to her, and with just her magical power, she had frozen the entire kingdom. So she was very sought after. The protagonist said that almost all the criminals were in their homes because they were a family. So nobody knew that she was in that place, and suddenly, he said that if all those mages who were there were also as powerful as her, but to break the silence, he had told the girl that he needed a book and wondered in his mind if the previous one he had arrived there and had hit the girl. If she had frozen her, and he had quickly asked her to bring him a cultivation book because he wanted to learn as his dad had installed it and he was not given much and he wanted to surpass one of his brothers. So the girl quickly prepared to give him the martial arts book that she had taken with care, and she had told him that after he finished reading it, she would give it to him right away. To which the girl told him that it was very big, so the protagonist asked her to take the book to his house, but it was useless for him, he could not even read it, but he was happy about something he was seeing. The system had warned him that it was going to analyze the book. He only had to have the book in his possession and the system would do everything for him. So he had seen a light for him to continue leveling up and learning many things just by having the book. He could level up, but something he had noticed was a woman. He said who it was. The boy told him it was his mother, to which he said why his mother from his previous life was there, and he tells us that before the channel when he was in Korea, he was an orphan who lost his mother at just 12 years old, just by taking care of him. He had always wanted to have a paternal family, but despite that, all the boys mistreated him just because he didn't have a mother, but he said why his mother was there and if it was her and that she had reincarnated as a person with the same physical features. He wondered what he had done, but after invading his mind, he realized everything he had done and had promised that he would not tell her that anymore. So he had noticed that his mother was sick and had invited him to take it with him, which surprised his son who used to treat her with disdain. Now he was calling her mother. The protagonist starts to remember everything he said and did, and says that he didn't mean it. But his mother tells him to please forgive her, which surprises the son even more. Even the servant is wondering what has changed in this boy and why he is acting so strangely. He has grown up and wants to be close to his mother and not be alone anymore. He asks his mother to forgive him. His mother just sits there, thinking, and says that she has a lot of things to do. The protagonist knows that this is a lie, because she is isolated by his father. But despite that, she is happy that her son is calling her mother again. The servant asks him what he is planning, and he tells her that he just wants to see his mother happy and healthy. He tells the servant to remind him to call his mother and take that tea with her, so it can alleviate her illness. And we see that after that, the mother is finally happy for everything her son has said to her, despite the fact that she never believed that he had changed. He had finally changed, and despite the way he treated her, he loved her. After that, the protagonist asked the girl to bring him all the chocolates she could, regardless of the price, because he needed them for something. The girl tells him that she will get everything for her young master. The protagonist is surprised by how much power and money can do. He doesn't know how he got it with just one order, but he is happy. He eats more and more, and he says that with all this accumulated wealth, he can level up. So he quickly asks his shadow to inform the chef to come quickly so he can tell him something. He wonders why the seventh is calling him, as he knows that the rumors say that he kills anyone who cooks something bad for him. He looks at the chef and sees that the protagonist is looking at him in that way, and he wonders if this is his end. But the protagonist just asks him what seasoning he used for that recipe. The chef starts by saying that he didn't want to make it bad and starts to beg for forgiveness. But the protagonist explains that he just wants to know the ingredients. So he starts to explain, saying that there are ingredients like sugar and many other things, until he mentions the flower of 10,000 years. The protagonist says that this ingredient is what he was looking for, and it's the one that provides him with mana. The boy who had previously given practice to the protagonist realizes what has happened and says that something strange is happening with the 7th young master. He also informs him that the 7th young master has defeated the 6th, which surprises him, as he wasn't just a weakling, and now he has become a threat. He says that apparently his plan will never be successful. We see the protagonist consuming the flower of 10,000 years and saying that it doesn't taste good. But in truth, his mana is increasing and accumulating more, so he wants to continue that dynamic. We see that the town is almost updating the book, as the book is finally completed and he has analyzed all the pages and says that he finally has the knowledge to cultivate. Therefore, he decided to bring that to the girl, and he also feels a presence behind him. And now, none other than the maid who kept chasing him after he had gone to the library. He told the girl that he had brought the book, but she appeared behind him. Suddenly, the protagonist asks if there was another book he needed. But the girl told him that there were no more books. The protagonist asked for a forbidden book, but the girl said that it was not allowed for people like him. No one could understand it, but she said that she could give it to him. The protagonist said that it was just curiosity, but suddenly the girl said clearly that the protagonist smelled good. He was surprised to see such a reaction from the girl, as she was considered a girl who killed anyone. But he realized that it was because he smelled good. It was like a leopard turning into a rabbit. He wondered why the girl had that reaction. She said that she only wanted to give him a chocolate. But she said no, but after insisting, she told the teacher yes and gave him the book, as that was what she had promised. So, he asked her to please take care of it, and then he quickly left. After analyzing it many times, he realized that finally, that was what he needed. That book was very important, so after analyzing it, the system began to charge. He thought it was normal, but suddenly he began to feel energy and power. He decided to train a lot to be able to receive it and give it energy. After that, several days had passed, and the protagonist decided to train. But I'm wondering what would happen if he exploded. He just ran, and that was basic training. But as the girl had appeared, she told him that it was not just basic, but something that he soon was using it as his mother to consume it and lose weight. Everyone was happy while she was not, because she couldn't even notice the girl behind her. After the protagonist was well trained, he had leveled up. But despite that, the energy was too much in his body. Therefore, his chest was breaking, but he used the skills he had obtained from the book he had previously analyzed of martial arts. He began to analyze and realized that all his powers couldn't accumulate in his neck, thus endangering everything that was happening. He also realized that the girl liked chocolates, because before, when he wrote the novel, a boy had written something and it was nothing more than her liking chocolate. Therefore, the protagonist has an advantage over all his brothers and says he will make the most of it. But when he opens his eyes, he realizes that he is full of flames and wonders who the person in front of him is. And we see that apparently it is a girl who tells him how a pig like him cultivates in front of her. It was none other than one of his sisters. So the protagonist wonders why she is crazy to be there if they haven't even met. But despite that, he knew that he couldn't say anything. If he apologized to her, then she would kill him. So he stays quiet and behaves like the main character. So after that, he begins to analyze and realizes that the sister doesn't like people who lie. So he tells her all his truths, and she begins to ask him if he thinks he will become the patriarch. The protagonist responded that he never thought of possibilities since he had ruined it before. But now, he just wanted to see himself strong. She asked him why he wanted to be strong, and he continued to answer that it was to protect his mother. When she heard this lie, she told him to shut up or she would kill him. She began to consume him with a fire snake, and told her brother not to do that because it could harm her, something she couldn't even imagine. The protagonist asked her what she wanted to express. He explained that he could help him become the patriarch, but she still said that she couldn't practice it. He replied that he knew many secrets, so if she let him, then he wouldn't tell her. But the girl, out of curiosity, began to talk, and suddenly explained that she apparently fears her eldest sister. Upon hearing this, the girl gets angry and tells the serpent to attack, but the protagonist says that no matter how much he strangles him, he will never let it kill him, and he will not confess that he did something wrong, so he begins to resist. And after that, the girl releases him and tells him that it seems his brother had grown since she doesn't like people who lie, and if he had told her something, she would have finished him off. She then takes out something that looks like a ball and sticks it to the protagonist's feet, leaving him surprised and asking what it was that hit him because he thought it was like a big rock or metal. But upon closer inspection, he realizes it was an apple. The system had told him it was not an ordinary apple, but a valuable artifact that if consumed could make him stronger. After investigating, he realized that it was Karsha, an artifact that could help improve his attributes such as magic or water elemental magic power, and that the young master had been given many of these, but the sword family's one was nothing special to him. Meanwhile, the girl continued to think that her brother had grown and become stronger, and if he continued like this, she would lose her position. So she asked her subordinate to keep an eye on the protagonist because she didn't want him to die, as with him she could get the patriarch's position. and the girl was about to ask why he was choosing this boy, to which she responded that sooner or later he would reveal his claws because apparently the protagonist was very powerful in her eyes. She then said that no matter what, she wouldn't let the protagonist die. And that's when they reveal the name of that apple. It was called Karsha. The protagonist says that if the girl from the library or the ice mage consumed that, they would become much more important than their family. So he was planning on not showing it to her, but he knew that there were no other people who could help him with it. So no matter if they killed him at that moment, he was going to quickly teach her and quickly began to apply everything he needed to help her consume it. But the girl refused and said she would not get involved in family problems. But the protagonist kept explaining that it wasn't because he wanted to become strong and take over the patriarch. He needed it to help his mother. But he didn't want to force her, so she continued to think and tell him no. And again, the protagonist tells her that it's necessary because his mother is currently just a beautiful and weak lady. This causes the girl to remember her past and reminds her that she had previously said that she had frozen a kingdom because a guard had come to her asking for money that a civilian owed him. But when the civilian refused to pay, the guard tried to kill her son. To protect him, she sacrificed her life to save him. Despite this, the guard did not bring up the topic and only said that trash like her would never take money from him. Since then, she considers that when people do not take care of their parents and mother, she will kill them. That's why since then, she started crying and told him that anyone who dared to do that, she would kill them. And after that, she had already addressed the king's clan that was there, and that's how she had killed all those guards in that instant, freezing them to death and calling them trash. That's why the protagonist had previously been classified, and she had told him that she would only help him because of that. But she did not tell him and told him to worry about his own hands. After that, the protagonist was happy because he knew he couldn't do that. But the girl informed him that she wasn't helping him because of the chocolates he gave her, but it seemed from her face that it was because of that. So the protagonist was happy. He asked her when they were going to do it, and she informed him that if he wanted to do it now, but there were many conditions, such as if something happened to the protagonist, he would die. The protagonist was getting scared and said he didn't want to continue with that. But the girl told him that because it was her, the probability could be lower. But the only thing she could affirm was that the protagonist would freeze because it was too powerful, and she had to use a lot of ice magic to counteract the power of that, so that her heart wouldn't explode from so much mana. The protagonist tells her that he doesn't care, and if it's for his mother, he would do it. The girl tries those things on the protagonist while we hear the protagonist's uncontrolled screams, while his sister was happy because she had heard that the protagonist had consumed it and wondered how a kid like him could convince the library mage, since she had asked her so much. Meanwhile, the other subordinate said she didn't know, but the protagonist had a very strong advantage, and if that happened and she committed it to her subordinate, then she would have the patriarchate. And she said that that was her goal from the beginning. She knew the protagonist was very weak, so she wanted to help him so that he could make her the patriarch again. So after that, she told her to keep a close eye on the protagonist because it could explode at any moment, and if he died, they could blame her since she was recently in the mansion while the protagonist was there, saying why he feels so hot and what was happening to him. So he decides that in the morning he has to train until he consumes all the mana in his body. We see in the morning the protagonist's rigorous training, running from one side to the other and saying that he would do it, and it had been like 3 days that he had done the same thing, even though the boy didn't even know how the protagonist had so much energy. And it was his surprising strength because the protagonist was carrying many kilos of weights on his feet, and yet he could climb a mountain as if it were a simple wall or a ladder. And after that, a week had passed and the protagonist continued as if it were nothing, and the boy asked him what he was still doing. But 2 weeks had passed and the protagonist continued as if it were nothing. The boy asked him what he was trying to do, and there we see that the protagonist was apparently much stronger and taller. His hair had grown while the girl continued to inform him that he could consume the Karsha before a year. The girl was surprised because not many people could consume it in such a short time. She asked him what other information he had, and she told him he had weights of 1,500 kilos. The girl said that that apparently was a lie, but she affirmed that it was true and that in just 1 week the protagonist was able to consume the Karsha. She asked him how the protagonist was right now, while we see the protagonist having tea with his mother and asking her many things, to which she only responded and told him that she wanted to be forever with her son. So she asked him please never leave her again, and complimenting the servant because she always treated the protagonist well. He knew that an event was approaching, something he couldn't stop, and it was no other than a girl of fire power who was infiltrated in his house. And that girl was no other than the one who accompanied the hero. Therefore, if his sister found her and cut off her arm, everything would repeat again. The protagonist was saying that he had to stop it because that girl had an extremely powerful power that only the hero could stop. But more importantly, he said that it seemed someone was stalking him, so he decided to pretend to be sleeping. The girl was surprised because she had never seen someone who could cultivate while sleeping, and she wondered if that was really a 9-year-old boy. She quickly decided to go tell him, but she didn't know how to inform him since no one had been able to do that before. The protagonist realized that she had left and decided to look for his subordinate to cancel his sister's attack. He would give the girl who would become the hero's best friend. So after that, he asked his subordinates to follow him and he wanted to do something. But the boy asked his young master why he was going to leave the mansion alone. He just told him to follow him quietly because what he was going to do nothing could come out, and if anyone spoke, he would finish it. So after walking several meters, he had met his target, no more and no less than the girl the hero had considered his friend forever, and a super powerful girl. They were there and could not handle her because her magic was completely different. But the protagonist had ordered the boy to use a little of his venom. The boy was surprised. His young master already knew from the beginning, but he had told him not to kill her just by throwing the venom that would paralyze her so they could talk to her and no one could leave that place. So the boy, seeing everything, told the master that he was going to attack but not to worry because he could neutralize her, and with a little of his magic, a little of his ability, he could stop the girl. So after falling, he asked them to cover her, but one of the guards who was there asked why an imbecile like him was in that place. The protagonist asked if he knew who the person was, but the boy didn't know who the person was, and he began to say that the person couldn't just enter the mansion like that, and he asked if he was the girl's companion and that he would kill him now. So he asked him to reveal his identity. The protagonist just told him not to talk to him, and the dark-skinned boy had interfered and told the boy that that was the seventh young man. But he said to stop talking nonsense because the seventh young man was not as handsome as him. The protagonist said they were just talking nonsense because they had never seen the seventh young man. But the protagonist wonders if that was an insult or a compliment, and the boy just tells him to shut up or he would die. So the protagonist tells him that he would give him his identity. He asked him to please call the central and ask if he was the seventh young man. The guy said yes, he would do it, but the protagonist told him that if he did something or something went wrong and someone recognized him, then he would die. The boy began to lower his head and said that he didn't recognize him and asked him to please forgive him, that he would forgive him now, but only if he stayed quiet about what he had seen. He tells him that he will stay quiet forever and never speak, and asked his master why he had that girl. He replied that the girl was very pretty. After that, she had been taken for investigation, and the system had again recommended many things for her to do for him as she has the ability, and was asking her to make a deal with the girls. So the main character began talking to her and told her that if she truly belonged to the Crimson Clan, to which the girl said yes, and the main character asked her something, why she had come in his place and if she wanted to talk yes or no, or just wanted to sit with her head. So he asked if she wanted to talk about something, to sit down, and people, for those who didn't understand what sitting is, maybe most of you understood, but it's like nodding your head, for example, if she wanted to say yes or no. So you know what I am talking about. After that, the girl, after telling the main character, told the girls to remove the bandage from her mouth, and the servant without any mercy had removed it. So they began talking in front of him. He asked her why she was there and what she was looking for, to which she replied that she had only come there because she had heard that there was medicine to cure her father, to which he began asking what illness her father had, and she had only explained that what the main character wanted from that girl was a chalice of fire, which was very important. So they began talking. The main character said he could help her, but he needed something. She said she didn't have any money and her village was just poor. So the boy only told her that he had the cure since his mother had given him that illness, and he asked her for her black shadow, or whatever it's called, that he would investigate and bring many of the objects that his mother had given him so that people could be cured. The boy was once again fascinated by the main character and asked him to please take care of him, and no matter if he hit him like before, he would serve him. The girl was once again surprised by everything she had seen from the main character and said that he seemed like the patriarch when he was young. And something I have to tell you, remember this a lot so that I can tell you something later and you understand it. That will be in the next part because in this one it won't be able to come out. But the main character's mistake was that he had said the girl's name. So he asked the main character how he knew her name. He didn't know what to answer because he had messed up. But he started to calm her down, saying that how he was going to give her that so easily because she was complaining if she was helping him, why was he giving all that to her family, and why did he know her name? She had to understand that it was him that was only benefiting her, so there was nothing strange about that. He asked the girl what she wanted to do, and she told the main character that she wanted to work for him, but the main character wanted her to apologize, and she had apologized. So after that, he told her why she had entered in that way. If he was only a pandemic, he would give it to her. But the girl told him she just wanted to save her father, and no matter what she had to do, she would sacrifice her life for it. So the main character had confirmed that he had her under his feet. Meanwhile, he cured her. She will only be his subordinate. So he quickly asks the servants to help her and to put on everything she had and to give her a lot of food, as the girl was apparently hungry. But he tells her his name. The girl remembers that she had heard that name and it was the useless one of the family. While everyone was surprised by the things the main character had said, between that soon he only told her that maybe that's how they knew him outside. So after that, he told her that she didn't seem like a bad person and something happened to the story, even if it was distorted, since the system had made him like that. While Mornito had arrived and told the main character that he was going to leave. He was going to return in 3 days because he had to help that family. But he confirmed that he would arrive on the date they had to look for something important and not to worry about the brothers. They would understand later, or sooner he would ask for forgiveness too. Church that he should go fast, while Mornito continued thinking the same voice used without before, but something had arrived. All the servants were scared, and it was no other than the main character's sister who had arrived for revenge or to test her brother. She had asked who that handsome man was in front of her, but he said it was nothing like what she had seen. He had just cleaned up. But she had asked him if he had eaten that, and she had told him that it could kill him. She actually wanted to kill him, but she told him that it didn't matter as long as he served her, she would be happy. So he quickly asked his brother to please fight with him, but as the main character was not in the mood for that, he told his sister he didn't have time to play. But he continued to tell her that the more handsome he is, the more love he'll give her. So suddenly, he continued to tell her that he doesn't need any of that, and she was now angry, saying that she wanted to test something with the main character. And it was none other than to see how much her strength had grown after what had happened before. She also said that he seemed to have a new toy that she needed. But he told her that that toy was him, referring to the girl, and saying that if she wanted it, he would fight her. The girl told him that if he wanted to fight, she would fight him. But she couldn't kill him, so she would have a religion. She would just fight the main character with a crime, and she would fight with her specialty, power, a power that she soon used and that he had been born with that ability. Therefore, she would only use one finger, while the main character could use all his strength, and if he won, it wouldn't be a win. He would just give her a strong blow, and then he would leave it like that. So the main character said that if it was one finger, it would be abuse. So he asked with all his hand, but the girl told him that that was enough to defeat him. So the battle between the main character and his sister began. Jumps here, jumps there. The main character gave her multiple attacks, and his sister said, "Why doesn't he get closer?" She said she was magic, therefore she had to keep him away from the enemy.